What's up, guys? I'm going to try to make this short and sweet as I have a really selective card today, which maybe I should be doing. I don't know. Yesterday was, 2-4. It was brutal. Basically, none of the losses were that bad except the hockey one. Minnesota T-Wolves had a 15-point lead with like 6 minutes left, and they didn't cover. They failed to cover by 1 point, I think. And then I don't think I was completely wrong on a couple of those baseball handicaps. I was 2-2 in baseball, and baseball continues to chug along. I think I'm doing all right in baseball. I thought the Twins were the right side. I mean, that one really close. They were almost able to do it. I think they had, I don't know what, it seemed like they had chances to tie or take the lead late in the game and couldn't get it done, lost by 1. Texas Rangers, Andrew Heaney, I think, gave up no runs in the game yesterday, but he only made it 4 1/3 or something like that because he ran his pitch count way too high. So that I didn't quite expect, and they took him out early, although he hadn't pitched that poorly really at all. So that sucked. We move on to today, I guess. We'll just put that in the past. I'm trying to turn this thing around. I was just kind of grinding out like small win after small win, had like a nice stretch like for a little while with just small wins every day. But now this is not looking good. We'll look at some plays today. I mean, looking at basketball, I wanted to go against the Phoenix Suns, but I just don't think I can play the Cleveland Cavs on a back-to-back. The Cavs are playing on a back-to-back. Phoenix, I think, is in a bad spot, and they are public. They're up from 5 to 5.5, 78% of the tickets, 94% of the cash. I mean, I also don't think that I can play against Phoenix, really, given the situation that they're in, where they are in the middle of the play-in scenario right now, and they could potentially move up and get out of the play-in. They're only one game out of that right now. And they're playing, I believe, the team that's one game ahead. One of the teams, or excuse me. I thought they were playing New Orleans. What am I saying? New Orleans is playing against Orlando tonight. Phoenix is playing Cleveland. So, yeah, Phoenix, I do actually think they're in a bad spot. Cleveland, I just don't think I can do it. They're in a back-to-back coming out of 2 straight games in elevation in Denver and Utah. And now they're coming out of that and going to Phoenix with no time off, although the Utah win could be like more of a momentum starter. So I do kind of still like the Cleveland side in that one, even though they're on the back-to-back. Phoenix is returning from a road trip. They're the only NBA team that's in that spot. They actually just beat the Pelicans in their last game, so that was a big win. So they're also kind of in a sandwich spot because after this Cavs game, they have the T-Wolves, and then they have the Pelicans, and then the Clippers twice, the Kings, the T-Wolves again. That's the rest of their season. So all the rest of their games are against Western Conference playoff teams. That is a brutal schedule, man. So then you might say, well, that means that Phoenix has to be focused here, though, because this is a winnable game. And they certainly don't want to completely drop out of the play-in spots, although I think that's highly unlikely at this point. But if they want to have any hope of getting out of the play-in spots, they're going to have to win these home games. The last 3 games of the season are on the road. So there is reason for them to be motivated here. So I'm just not going to do it. Move to the NHL, which I do have a few leans where I don't think Toronto is in a good spot, although they've ticked up from -124 to -125, 71% of the tickets, 68% of the cash. So they're public. Cash discrepancy is against them. Toronto's, I believe, coming off a win over Florida. That's a big win for Toronto. And they got Tampa Bay coming in now. I think Toronto could potentially be in a letdown spot there. Tampa coming off kind of an ugly loss to the Red Wings. Tampa, I believe, is trying to stay alive in the wild card here, although they are 7 points ahead, but they lost to the Red Wings. So the Red Wings are the top team that's out of the wild card in the East right now, and they inched a little bit closer with that win over Tampa, whereas Toronto, I mean, they're more safe in having a playoff spot at this point, as they are in the 3rd spot in the Atlantic Division, and they are what are they? Yeah, they're 6 points ahead of the first wild card, which is this Tampa Bay team. So, I mean, are they going to be motivated to stay ahead of this Tampa team? I don't know. I think Tampa's going to have more motivation there. Toronto, kind of in the letdown spot off of that big win, so I don't like them. I lean to Tampa, and I lean against the LA Kings. The Kings returning home from a 4-game road trip. They had a tough loss in the final game of the road trip, but they were tied late in the game against the Jets, and they lost on a third period goal against Winnipeg, who are a good team. LA is returning home from that with only one day off. Not a good spot for them, really. And they got Seattle coming in. They have some winnable games up for the rest of the season, though, so it looks like they're probably not going to have a problem making the playoffs at this point. But maybe you might say they do still have to be motivated here because they are only 3 points into the wild card right now. They're only 3 points above St. Louis, or the first team out of the wild card. So LA can't really afford to lose really any of these games. So we'll see what happens there. They're up against Seattle, so it's certainly a winnable game for LA. Seattle, I mean, they're pretty much out of it at this point. Probably are coming to the realization that that is the case. But Seattle, I mean, they haven't given up. They just beat San Jose. I mean, not an impressive win, but they did still come to play, and they won to start the road trip. So they have a little bit of momentum there. So I lean against the LA Kings. They're down from minus 178 to minus 174. They do look like they have a little bit of the cash discrepancy. 86% of the cash, 83% of the tickets. Certainly they are public, though, and I don't know about the cash discrepancy because the line has moved against them. So I like Seattle. In that one, the game I'm actually going to play looks like it has the biggest, maybe the strongest market read of all these games. I'm going to play on the Edmonton Oilers against a team that is also returning home as well from a long road trip, although it's against Dallas. Dallas does have a couple days off. Dallas is down from minus 121 to minus 113 on the money line, so there is significant money, I think, going against Dallas here. 52% of the tickets on Edmonton, so the ticket count looks like it's almost evenly split, but 89% of the cash on Edmonton. So it does look like there is some significant money coming in on Edmonton. And, I mean, why not? I mean, you look at this, Dallas just swept a long road trip. They look unstoppable right now. They've won how many games in a row? Well, they won all 4 games on a road trip that took them out to the Pacific Coast and then up to the Pacific Northwest. Prior to that, they'd won 3 games at home, but 2 of them were against not very good teams in Arizona and Pittsburgh. And then they beat Arizona again on the road. They beat San Jose on the road trip, and they beat Seattle on the road trip. So we know Dallas is good, but is this win streak really as impressive as it looks? Probably not. I mean, the only good teams they beat in the entire span of 7 games, there were a home game against the Kings and then a road game against Vancouver was the most impressive. Now they're returning home. They do have 2 days or 3 days off, actually, excuse me, but I'm not sure if that's going to help them that much. I mean, yeah, it might help alleviate the distractions of returning home, which there are always distractions when you return home, but they might have been able to get that out of the way, having multiple days off to get the family life stuff out of the way. But having multiple days off might also disrupt this momentum. I mean, they had this momentum while they were out on the road trip, so I don't think having multiple days off and then returning home is actually much of a positive when you have a win streak like that. And now you're coming back home. You have an extended period of time off. That might hurt your momentum, man. And now they got Edmonton coming in. Dallas, I mean, they're sitting pretty right now. They have a 3-point lead over their nearest competitor in the West, excuse me, which are both Colorado and Vancouver. Colorado in their division. Vancouver isn't. And they did just beat Vancouver a couple of games ago on that road trip. So Dallas, I mean, they're in a good spot right now. It's fairly likely they're not going to lose the 1 seed at this point, although we don't know for sure, but they have a decent amount of padding right now with the 3-point lead there. Whereas Edmonton, they're in the thick of it, man. I mean, they're only 5 games out of a wild card spot. They don't really want to drop into a wild card. I think they're pretty much guaranteed a playoff spot at this point, and it's kind of certain they're going to be in either the 2 or the 3 in the Pacific, but I don't think they want to be in any danger or drop down further. I think they have a little bit more motivation here with Dallas being atop the entire Western Conference and Edmonton still kind of more in the thick of the playoff hunt there. So I like all of that. I like the spot for Edmonton more than I like the spot for Dallas. Dallas not in a good spot. Edmonton lost the first game of this road trip, so I think they're going to want to try to right the ship. They only have 1 day off. So I think that's actually maybe helpful in this case because, excuse me, though, they won't have an extended period of time off. So they're just kind of playing through and playing hockey, even though, yes, they did lose their most recent game to St. Louis in overtime, which I think also kind of puts them in a bounce back spot here. St. Louis is out of the playoffs right now. They're the first team out of the playoffs. So we'll do that. Edmonton Oilers. And then over in Major League Baseball, I don't see that much that I like in Major League Baseball either here, but the one game I'm going to be on, this is kind of a weird situation here. I'm going back to the well, and I'm taking the Minnesota Twins yet again. I mean, at some point, it's got to turn around, right? I mean, people are acting like Minnesota's like some awful team. I don't think they're that bad. I mean, they're in the playoffs last year. They have a lot of the same players they had last year. They've lost 2 games in a row. The final loss to the Royals was ugly, yeah, but they looked good against the Royals for the most part in that series. Had a really bad game. And then yesterday, they didn't play that badly. They just lost by 1 to a pretty decent Brewers team. But the public is not going to want to have anything to do with Minnesota with what they've seen over these last couple of games that they've played, whereas Milwaukee, I think, is still undefeated, 4-0. So that's going to be the team. If the public comes in on this, they're going to want Milwaukee for those reasons. Plus, I think they're going to look at this and they just don't really know who either of these pitchers are. So they're probably going to want Minnesota for that, or excuse me, Milwaukee for that reason as well. But I see the market moving against this, man. Milwaukee looks like they opened a minus 110 favorite. Not a huge favorite for a home team, which is kind of the books are kind of telling you that Milwaukee's not even getting home field here. They're kind of telling you that Minnesota may not be the better team necessarily, although maybe they're even telling you that too, but they might be telling you that Minnesota has the edge in this pitching matchup here, and I agree, which is why I'm doing this. The line's gone down to minus 105 now on Milwaukee, 74% of the tickets on them, so they're public, but there's reverse line movement going against them, only 64% of cash on them, so that tells you some of the bigger bets are on the other side on Minnesota. I think this checks like kind of all the boxes for me in this game because you're going against a public team. Everything in the market looks good. The bullpen situation looks good to me. Where Milwaukee, neither starter in this matchup yesterday went deep into the game. Younis actually pitched better than I expected, but then it was a close game, and Milwaukee had to use like all of their best relievers in the game. They had to use Uribe in a save. They had to use a couple of their setup men. So they used like a lot of their best relievers yesterday. They used 4 relievers. They used some of the back end of their bullpen, kind of the best relievers they have. So they're going to have a lot of their better relievers unavailable in this one. So that's not good for Milwaukee. Whereas Minnesota, on the other hand, they had the advantage of being down for like the whole game yesterday. So even though Varland also got knocked out early, Younis threw way fewer pitches, though. So it was weird that they took him out. But that was kind of what I said. Younis was kind of a converted reliever. So I expected him to get knocked out of that game early. And I was right. And it just still didn't get there. Varland pitched longer into the game, but he unfortunately gave up 3 runs and put too many runners on base, which sucked. But Minnesota was able to pretty much save their pen by just having 2 guys come in, 2 relievers pitch 2 innings each, and just kind of save the rest of the bullpen. So Minnesota's bullpen is in better shape here. So I like that. Then the starting pitching matchup. This is interesting, man. So Minnesota has Chris Paddack pitching. He's a 28-year-old. He's a guy, like, I looked at this and I'm like, who the hell is Chris Paddack? Like, I've never even really heard of him before, but he's been in the league since 2019, but he hasn't pitched a full season or anywhere near. This is a weird pitching matchup, man. I'm telling you, when you look at this, neither of these pitchers really has pitched that much since 2021. However, at least with Paddack, he has pitched a little bit in the last 2 seasons, although his last full season was 2021. And looking at his stats, yeah, I mean, in 2021, they were the worst out of the 3 seasons that he pitched. He had a good first season in 2019. Maybe it was because hitters weren't familiar with him yet, but looking at his stats overall actually aren't that bad. He has more than 9 strikeouts per 9 innings over his entire career, so that's good. Strikeout walk ratio 5, that's also good. So he is a strikeout guy. He's got strikeout ability. That's good. I like that about him. His career whip is actually down 1.14, so that's actually good too, although a lot of that is taking into account his longest season, which was 2019, his first season. So he has been worse since then. But why is that the case? Like, did the COVID lockdown stuff completely throw him off? Did he get injured? I don't know why he hasn't played since 2021. All of that is kind of a mystery, but I like his overall stats, man. So I think he's the better pitcher in this matchup, which is why I'm doing this. And maybe he's in a scenario where he'll be able to bounce back a little bit. He only made relief appearances last year, so I don't love that. He was a starter for Minnesota in 2022. Didn't have horrible numbers that year, but only made 5 starts. And then I don't know if it was an injury-shortened season or what. But then you can look at his stats against Milwaukee. They really haven't seen him much. They're 0 for 10 off of him lifetime, which is only spread across 3 batters. So for the most part, they're unfamiliar with him. And he's a guy who looks like he has decent stuff. So I would much rather be on Paddock in this game, whereas Joe Ross pitching for Milwaukee, he's a little bit older. He's 30, and his stats on his career are worse, with a whip of 1.33. That's significantly worse. His strikeout numbers are worse, with only 403 and 443 and a third innings pitched. So below 9 strikeouts per 9, fairly significantly. So he doesn't have as good of strikeout stuff, really, as it looks like his strikeout stuff isn't really that bad, but not quite as good as Paddock. And his walks are way higher than Paddock's as well. So his career walks per 9 is like 2.9. He spent his entire career with Washington. And kind of like Paddock, he was good for like one season, and then he kind of started getting significantly worse. He had a little bit of a resurgence in 2021, though, after he missed like almost the entire 2018 season. He came out of the bullpen a lot in 2019 and didn't have good stats coming out of the bullpen. Became a starter again for almost the entire 2021 season, did a little bit better, but then he hasn't pitched at all since then, where at least with Paddock, you're getting a guy who has appeared in games the last 2 seasons. Ross has not appeared in a major league game since 2021, so I don't think that's an advantage, man. He's not used to it. I think he's had way too much time off, so even though you're going to have to argue that, well, because Milwaukee's going to start him in this game, that means he is ready. They think he's ready to go, but still, that's a little bit questionable, man. And Minnesota, they've seen him 10 at-bats worth as well, so not that much of a history versus either of these pitchers from the opposing lineup, so that doesn't mean that much, I don't think. But Minnesota's 2 for 10 off him lifetime, so they do have a couple of hits off him, whereas at least Paddock doesn't have any hits off of him yet against this Milwaukee lineup. But all that being said, I do think that Minnesota does have the starting pitching advantage here as well. So I think they have the advantage pretty much in every aspect here. It looks like the market read is strongly on them, and I think Minnesota has the bullpen advantage here today with the lack of rest on the side of the Milwaukee bullpen, and I think Minnesota has the better of the 2 pitchers going in, the pitcher that's more prepared to be in this game and hasn't had 2 entire years off from pitching in a major league game. So I'm going to fade Ross, fade the Milwaukee bullpen, fade Milwaukee overall. That's Minnesota. I believe I got them at minus, what did I get them at? Minus 102 again? I don't know, something in that realm, in that ballpark. Minus 108. And then the Edmonton Oilers plus 100. That's going to do it for me, man. Let's get back on track. Just 2 games today. Peace.